Welcome back to another episode of Trading Secrets. Today, we are joined by stand-up comedian, actor, TV host, and executive producer Howie Mandel. Having remained a constant force in showbiz for decades, Howie has diversified his skill set by wearing as many different hats as possible in TV, film, and even in the podcast space, hosting his own show with his daughter Jacqueline. Howie Mandel does stuff. Throughout his illustrious. That is a great word there.
Illustrious.
Illustrious. I'm going to have to give my producer.
Well, it's my career. You didn't have to do it. My career is illustrious, and you didn't know it.
I didn't know it, and I haven't done it. Throughout his illustrious career, Howie has notably been very open about his mental health, including his diagnosis with ADHD, OCD, and misophonia. Although there have been many difficulties that come along with those diagnoses, Howie has continued to remain an advocate for mental health awareness and strives to be an example for those struggling with their mental health in any capacity. Today, we're going to discuss the unique career path that Howie has taken in the entertainment industry, how he's overcome mental health struggles throughout his career, and how his experiences can help our audience in their everyday lives. Howie, through your amazing, illustrious career, thank you so much for being here on Trading Secrets. We appreciate it.
My pleasure, buddy.
All right. Well, I listened to an interview of yours, and you said there was a day that changed your life. And you said it was April 19th, 1977. So I threw that in my AI, and I said, how long ago was that exactly? 47 years, 1 month, and 2 days, and that was 17,217 days ago. And this is in an industry like the entertainment biz where some people can't last a month. So the first thing I got to start off with, when you look at your brand, your position, and your navigation, how have you continued not only to remain relevant, but hit the peaks of your career all these decades later in a business where people fall out and burn out in literally days, weeks, or months?
You know, my simple answer is to not think. You know, I would imagine people tune into this podcast to find out how they should think. And I think thinking is our downfall. And because I believe that opportunity and instinct is what makes our species maybe superior than some other species on this earth. And due to my issues with OCD and mostly ADHD is the fact that when somebody has ADHD, just by virtue of having that issue, they are usually impulsive without thinking of ramifications, you know, whether you have to move around, but that's how your mind goes, you know. Right. And if you don't have ADHD, if you have the need or the want to move in a certain direction, the regular somebody who doesn't have that might think, oh, this is what I want to do. But if I do this, this can happen. If I don't do this right, I remember what happened last time. And we have a plethora of coulda, shoulda, wouldas. And what I've noticed in my life is I don't say no. I never say no. And my philosophy is that, you know, no is N-O, which are the two first letters in the word nothing. It's the beginning of nothing. And I have probably made more mistakes and had more failures than the average person my age. But that's because I delve into everything, you know, even, and this isn't a knock, this is a thing, but even the fact that I'm here today, you know, you just asked me to be on and I said, okay.
Sure.
You know, but and I don't know what comes out of this. I don't know what comes out of, I just left 3 other podcasts that I was doing today also, some of which the people I didn't know, but I get to meet people that I didn't know. And that could blossom into something. So when I got dared on April 19th, 1977, to get up on stage at a comedy club in Toronto, it was just a dare. I went, okay, without saying, okay, this is what I want to do, without thinking that I must prepare, without thinking that this is a path I want to take in life. I just went, okay. And in the moment, if I had to kind of think back on what I was thinking, I wasn't thinking. I thought that would be funny. And why will it be funny? Because I'm not a comedian, because I'm not pursuing this. So if somebody says, ladies and gentlemen, Howie Mandel, it's kind of funny. There's no reason to say, ladies and gentlemen, Howie Mandel. And once I show up and I have nothing, then that's kind of funny, and I'll deal with that moment as it comes. And that's what happened. They went, ladies and gentlemen, Howie Mandel. And then I got terrified as I hit the stage and looked into the faces of the people that were waiting to see something. And if you look at old videos from the 80s of me, as I did that first night, that adrenaline flowed, that fear flowed, and I started going, okay, all right. And I was panicking to come up with something. And they started laughing at my panic, and I started going, okay, what? And I didn't understand. And then it was just silly. I pulled a glove over my head, and I just carried gloves because I had OCD. And if I went to a public restroom, I had to put on gloves, and I just had it. I didn't know what to do. I pulled it over my head. I started breathing through my nose. The fingers were going up and down. The audience started laughing. That became a signature piece. Me blowing a glove up on my head bought me my first house. My point is that everything is, I think everything and every opportunity in everybody's life is accidental, and everybody is where they need and should be. And the only reason that some people are someplace maybe perceived in a better place, I mean, aside from personal health and whatever I'm talking about, career-wise, or it is because other people just don't do it, which is the opposite of 90. And then if they do it, they overthink it. And if they overthink it, a lot of them quit it because it's really hard to, nothing that has any amount of value is achieved without an incredible amount of stamina to keep going. You got to want to do what you're doing more than you're looking for the success to come tomorrow. Steve Jobs toiling in his garage with an idea that, for all intents and purposes, if you really thought about it and put yourself in that position, is silly. IBM was already there. Yep. What is the average person, being even my age? I put myself in that mindset, going like, I never thought I would ever have a computer, let alone have a computer on my phone. But the point is, I wasn't going to do anything that I needed a computer for. Computers seemed out of this world. And then for him to design and think and come up with an idea that is just proliferating, everybody's life and space, is just because he did it and he thought it. The only difference between you, and when I say you, anybody listening or watching this, and him, is he did it, you didn't. He's passionate about it, you're not. He tried it and didn't quit, and you didn't even try it. The same thing with Elon Musk. It's not, I come from retail, originally, and I was in the carpet business. Right? But I was in the carpet business. And the point was, if I wanted to open up a store and I wanted to take Visa or American Express or whatever, I had to go to my bank and say, I want to take credit cards. And they would give me the little machine to put the credit card in. And then if anybody paid on credit card, then it cost me, they would charge me, the card or the bank would charge me 4 or 5%. So I would make that much less, but I had the convenience of being able to take a credit card. Elon Musk said, why don't I have one flow of all those credit cards going to one bank? I can say, if I bring you tens of millions of dollars to this bank, instead of charging me 4 or 5%, why don't you charge me 1%? They said, okay, that makes sense. And I'll charge everybody 1.5%. And I came up with a program that is in everybody's PayPal. I came up with that program where it all flows through one source. And I'm going to make a penny or 5 pennies on every sale in the world. And that's why it makes sense. I don't have a GED. I understand. I didn't think about it. I've used that theory, but I didn't think about doing that. And I didn't work on doing that.
Interesting. So that's a wild thesis that I would say that most people that have come on the show don't technically have, which is interesting, right? We've had billionaires and actors and Hall of Fame athletes and so many people that are like, I manifested, I knew where I was going. It was tactful, it was intentional, and I knew it was going to happen. And what's interesting is if you take kind of a stroll down memory lane, you think about your Hollywood star, name top 100 comedians of all time, all the accolades, which are endless for you. When you go back to that kid who was a carpet salesman and you look at the trajectory of your career, in no way, shape, or form are you telling me you envisioned, planned, or thought what is today would ever be a reality?
So the difference between what you just described from some of your other guests and me
Yeah.
is, if you have the wherewithal and the makeup to say, you know what, I'm going to build the biggest company in this kind of whatever the source of the income is going to be. And I
Sure.
know I can do it. I know I can do it. And if you could put blinders on and just, manifest it, not quit and not stop until it's done, then yes, that's a great philosophy. I don't know that a lot of people have that willpower. There are so many people in the 1970s when I came out here to LA, I promise you, that are far more talented than me, far funnier than I am, they have much more going for whatever it is that it takes to make it than I did. But I'll tell you what they didn't have. There is a ton, regardless of how good you are, there's a ton of rejection. There's a ton of failures. There's shit that happens in the room when you're trying to do comedy. A lot of the greatest people, the reason you don't know their name, they just stopped. And I get it. I get it. You give up. It's just really hard. It's really hard to fail. It's really hard to not move ahead. It's really hard to be stagnant. It's really hard to look around you and see what somebody else has achieved or something else has achieved and you're not there. That's discouraging. Discouragement, fear, just fatigue it weighs on everybody. That's why, most people in life, when you listen to the news, I think that's the problem with politics right now, is the fact that we're all waiting. They're talking about what the government owes them and what they want from the world. But if you really believe in yourself, or you're really open, or like me, kind of carefree, and you'll just keep, I don't say I want to go there, but I do say I want to put my right foot forward right now. And then after that, I say I want to put my left foot forward. And then after I say I want to put my right foot forward, I seem to be in a different place. It's not, I'm not goal oriented. And that doesn't mean being goal oriented but rather than thinking about wanting to be ahead or what I'm going to do, I am so focused, and maybe it's because of my mental health issues, I have to distract myself so I'm not inside my own head. So I have to be incredibly busy. So I have to be working on something, and to that end, stand-up comedy changed my life, because when I did it that first night, I was so afraid and so scared, but also like in a positive way. My analogy is like a roller coaster. I love scary rides. I love roller coasters. The higher it is, the scarier it is, the faster it is, the closer to death you think you're becoming, the more your adrenaline is pumping. You go, I got to go on again. You don't want to be bored and just have a breeze going through your hair. You want something exciting. And I crave that, and it forces me to be in the moment and not worry about something that happened, not care about something that is going to happen, which I have no control over. And if I live and constantly try to live in the moment, then that has, and I believe for everyone, that would open up doors. I don't think we all can it's really hard now because social media has inundated our world. So we are inundated with the ability, with the advent of looking and being aware of, what somebody else has, what you're supposed to look like, what you are supposed to achieve, and then measuring yourself against somebody else's Instagram page.
Exactly. It's toxic, and it's having a huge impact on, even there's like new terms out there called like moneyphobia, where people are comparing what other people have, and they're having like dysmorphia within their wallets. It's such a real thing, Howie. And I think what the piece of advice—
it's not a positive to see somebody else.
No.
That I feel when somebody comes up to me and says, I'm trying comedy. How do you, what would your advice be to be successful? I said, well, it depends what you are qualifying as success. The amount, to be totally honest with you, and this isn't going to ring it's not going to ring true to anybody, but except myself, and it doesn't matter. If I was a janitor today, and I'm not knocking any kind of thing, but I'm just saying if I wasn't doing what I'm doing, but I had the ability twice a week or once a week to jump on stage at a comedy club late at night and do what I'm doing, to find something in life, to find one thing in life that you're excited about, that you can't wait to do. I can't wait to Thursday night and just to do my comedy. I can't wait to Thursday night for my poker game. I can't wait for whatever it is. We have a tendency right now to not have that. And we have terms where Wednesday is hump day, and hump day is halfway through the week where you're doing the shit you don't want to be doing, and you're hoping to get to the weekend just so you don't have to do the shit you don't want to be doing. Not because you're looking forward to something, not because you're excited about something. And if you listen, this is also a terrible thing to say, but nobody gets out of this alive. And if you walk if you walk into a graveyard, who's the richest person in the graveyard? Who's got the And I doubt that anybody listening, they always ask people in my business, how do you want to be remembered? The truth is you won't. You won't be remembered. Do you know your grandfather's father's name? Do you know your grandfather's?
I don't. And I literally made this comparison. 4 generations, I don't know them. So how are people going to know you? And the same thing with our houses. New families will live in here. My car, everything. It's just rinse and repeat.
So for you to lean your happiness or whatever you deem as your success based on something that is so fleeting and so in the scheme of things doesn't matter. All we have is this little speck of time. And in this speck of time, I would implore everybody, and I do this for my children too, just find something. There are so many opportunities out there. Just find something you're really excited about. And the things that these people that you talk to that are incredibly successful, that's what they were passionate about. Even if they were chasing the dream of building a machine, building a technology, building a company, owning a sports team or whatever, that was something they were passionate about. And what you realize when you finally get these, that almost the path to it and the achievement of getting it is far richer in your life than having it.
I love that comparison. You're dropping $1 million bombs on these listeners right now, Howie. One thing I want to go back to, because we are a money and business podcast, is I love what you said about how that glove bought you your first house. And one thing we echo on this is that we can learn through dollars and cents, and behind money and numbers, we can be educated and have some insight. So bring me back to that moment, that time. What exactly do you mean that glove bought you your first house? How much were you making in the space at that time? What did it look like?
I'll tell you exactly what it is. And this is what, one of my favorite philosophies and books is, did you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah. I don't know that it's a well-written book, but I don't have a GED. And I am a proponent. First of all, I think that financial literacy is not happening in our world.
No.
And, there are people that are very, again, I'm using the word wrongly, but successful who are of age and they have to ask their accountant, what can I afford? Can I buy this house? What is the mortgage going to be? And and I've always been like this. I believe that once you have 4th grade math and literacy, you could be self-sufficient. You could be, you could make millions. You couldn't. And I've always looked at, and this is the philosophy of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, every dollar I ever made, that dollar is an employee. I'm not looking to spend that dollar. I'm saying, how can that dollar make money for me? So the first time I had $5,000 in the bank, I remember this. I had $5,600 in the bank.
How old were you?
Well, I'm talking about when I first moved out here, like 22.
Okay.
This is when I made a move. I bought a term deposit for 10 years at 12%. And my wife was going, well, 10 years, you're tying up $5,000. So I said, well, no, for 10 years, I'm guaranteeing myself 12%. And I trust that, with the 600 now, and, I'm doing sets of comedy for $35 and $50 and $100, I'm going to build up another 5,000. And you know what I'm going to do with that? I'm going to buy another term deposit. I'm going to be guaranteed the 12%. I want to guarantee the 12%. And I always, because I never trusted and still don't, that this business is sustainable in as far as, you know, you always feel like, you know, I didn't open up a store. I have to show up and be funny or have a success or do a pilot that goes to series. I mean, I've been really lucky in hindsight, but you don't know that going in. You always think this is your last job.
Yeah, of course.
So, but I do know that once you hand me $1, I have that dollar. I have that. So what can I do with that dollar? It's always, what can I do and how safe do I want to be with that dollar? So I was always investing. It's like, even if I'm going to go rent an apartment, I was renting an apartment, a 2-bedroom apartment, and renting out the other apartment, you know, the other room, so that it would cost me nothing. Most people, as per Rich Dad Poor Dad, will come out of college, you know, get $100,000 job, you know, right away, work for somebody, and then go buy a $300,000 home and buy themselves a $250,000 debt. So that's what you're doing with $100,000. You're buying a debt. I would never buy a debt. Don't buy a debt until it's not a debt. Have money, make money, you know. And I've always invested in weird things, and I've always been really involved in real estate. I love real estate. I'm sitting in my office right now, and I rent out. You know, when I started doing really well, I in the 80s, KB Homes was building. The Vegas became the biggest growing city in America, and all the trades were moving out there. So I started building. I bought dirt around the airport, and we started building warehouses for trades, because they would. And I knew that they could rent warehouse space, and those tilt-ups cost nothing to build, right? It's just a box, it's a warehouse with an office in front. But instead of taking rent for them, I would sell them because they were all out there, all the plumbers and electricians and tilers and all these people building all the hotels and houses. So I'd say, why don't you buy, it's a commercial condo. Now, instead of paying your rent, you're paying your mortgage, which is a write-off, and this is accruing more value. So I couldn't build enough to sell them. Then I noticed all the residential building companies were moving out there, like KB Homes and things. And they would build a tract of 2,000 homes in Summerlin. So I'd wait for those to start getting built, and then they'd be auctioning off the houses. People would line up. There'd be like multiple offers on that. So going into like Summerlin and that, I would buy a little plot of dirt for almost no money, just on the road that goes into this subdivision, because I noticed there was no infrastructure. You don't have to be smart to do that. And then I would build a little mini mall that have a car wash, a gas station, and a little, because where are you gonna? They don't want to drive all the way to the strip to go get gas.
Yeah, it's
right there. You're going to fill up when you're right at home. And I built a ton of gas stations. I ended up selling all those, but it's just stuff that makes sense and you can't lose on.
Yeah.
Nobody was buying the dirt out there. I was buying it for pennies. It wasn't a big investment. But it's always been, you know, that kind of, I learned from Monopoly. I loved when I could buy a house and, you know, I was trying to get as much money and bankrupt everybody else in the game. Right.
I love it.
But it fascinated me as somebody, even without an education, that I could buy this little red piece of plastic and I could put it on a spot. And then regardless of how I played the game, every time somebody landed on that spot, they were giving me money. I wasn't working hard. I was doing no more thought. It was just kind of passive. And for me, even today, passive income, and that's your dollar making a dollar.
Of course.
How can I make money without being there? How can I invest $1 and make money? And it's always, and how can I increase the inflow to always be more than the outflow?
Exactly. And it's funny now, you talk about Vegas, they're working on that train that's going to be a 2-hour trip in total from LA to Vegas. You think about how that will impact the real estate market there. It'll be huge. But Howie, one thing you said there, I haven't let go of, you said in the 80s when I started to do really well. That is, tell me a little bit more. Like, what did really well mean to Howie Mandel in the 80s? What did like income in the 80s look like? Or when did you start to notice like, holy shit, like this is a legit career. I am making so much more than I expected.
I grew up in an apartment building, and, you know, I started at 14 with a paper route. I think in the early 80s, after I did Make Me Laugh and a Young Comedian special, I started making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. You know,
Wow.
and that was from stand up, you know, and
Was that money coming from people showing up like ticket sales, or was that from the TV?
yeah. So what happened was after I did the young comedian special, the sixth annual. It was me, the young unknown comedians were me, Jerry Seinfeld, Richard Lewis, and Harry Anderson, and it was hosted by the Smothers Brothers. And then what I did was, because I understood business and because I had come from retail, it wasn't like the phone was ringing off the hook for it to hire me, but I realized that a lot of people knew me. TV was very different there. You can appear on TV and then the next day your life was totally different. Okay. So what I did is I four-walled. I saw that Gallagher was doing it. So I would go to towns or call towns, rent the theater, get the how much would it cost to rent the theater. I hired my friend, this guy by the name of Andy Nolman, and I hired him. He would buy the ads in the papers, and I knew that from selling carpet and everything, how to buy ads and how to advertise. And I would just sell tickets, so I was my own promoter, you know. Gotcha. And then I would also sell merch, you know, so I could go in and make, you know, a lot of money, tens of thousands of dollars a night at the time, you know, on a $15 ticket and I could do 2 shows a night. And, you know, I sold a Radio City Music Hall 2 shows in an hour, you know. Wow. And it was just easy. As many times as I wanted to show up and do shows, because I was on TV, I could make as much as I wanted to, you know. And then I realized, wow, this is, what do I do with all this? So something else. I'll buy some dirt, you know. Okay. I bought a lot of term deposits. I'll buy some dirt. I started doing bridge loans to people, you know, at higher rates. There are people that, you know, wanted to close deals and real estate deals, and through my accountant, he told me what they were. It just made sense. The collateral was really easy. You know, it was probably a better deal if they were delinquent on a payment, then I could reclaim whatever they were building, which I didn't end up doing. And then I ended up buying residential buildings and rental buildings and.
Amazing. The 4-wall theory. The only other person that we've had on that's ever discussed that is actually Carrot Top. And still to this day, at the Vegas theater that he has his residency, he still has a 4-wall contract with them. And it's so interesting to hear that decades and decades ago, that's what you did. You were your own promoter. You were your own agent, making all that.
Not only that, the guy that I hired, Andy Nolman, at that time, this is the early 80s, so we learned the business together. Yep. There was this tiny little French in Montreal. I'm Canadian. Gilbert, this guy in Montreal, in Quebec City, started a little French festival called Juste pour Rire. And he said, this is really good, and you guys know how to promote. So he hired Andy away from me. Okay. And Andy went there, and they built something called Just for Laughs, which became the prominent comedy festival that discovered Dave Chappelle, Kevin Hart, Tom, you know, every comic you've ever done. It just closed. I think they just went bankrupt. But the point was, for years and years and years, it was the biggest thing. And we discovered Jimmy Fallon, we discovered Roseanne Barr, we discovered everybody that you know in comedy.
And this goes back to your original theory of, you know, when you were a carpet sales guy, when you were doing comedy work, when you had your 4-wall business going and you had your promoter. That obviously wasn't on the radar. That was just your navigation of, hey, I'll do this, I'll do this, I'll do this. It will come to fruition. Stop.
All it was is like I was on TV.
Yeah.
I noticed that now when I was on TV, if I showed up at the Comedy Store the next day, like people were screaming, or they heard that I was going to be on tomorrow and they were selling out. So I said, I don't know promoters. I'm not in show business. Why don't we rent a theater and put an ad in the paper that I'm going to be there and see if people show up. It just made sense. You know what I mean?
For sure.
And I didn't think I'd have a tour. And then I'd go, oh my God. So I put that on sale and that sold out. And there's 2 shows in one night. Let's add more shows. Well, if that's what's happening in Dallas, then let's go into Houston. Because next night, let's route. I didn't know anything about live performing. And then I started doing theater after theater after theater. And now I'm a touring comedian.
So at what point, Howie, does the entertainment biz bring you from those? You know, I know you had the prominent roles. You started to do your TV film work in, I think it's the 80s, and then you're on Gremlins 1, then Gremlins 2, which is 1990. At what point, now you're on tour as a comedian, do these hundreds and hundreds of thousands turn into, like, my career is turning into millions and millions?
Um, I don't know that I marked it at that point, and I just all I've ever tried to do in my career and my life is sustain,
Okay.
and do
Yeah.
and be busy, and it just so happens that things happen. Like I'll give you an example. I did Deal or No Deal, and it was a huge success. And
Yeah.
when it was time to renegotiate, rather than asking for a ton more money, I said, "Oh, you know what? Give me a production deal." And a production deal is Universal and NBC will give me a deal where they pay the overhead. I can
Okay.
hire a staff. They give me an office on the lot. And what we do is we're going to develop ideas and retain some ownership of some ideas that we can sell and put on NBC and others and other networks. I think that's worth more than the kind of money that I can ask for now if I own something IP.
Yeah.
I didn't even know it was considered IP, but I just thought ideas become valuable. They really do, and especially since I became more aware of that after Silicon Valley, because my dad used to sell stocks, and I understood the stock market as being, if you take the amount of sales and
Yeah.
profit something's making, and then you look at the bricks and mortar and the value of what they own, stocks always made sense to me.
Yeah.
When Silicon Valley came to be, I saw that people were investing in ideas. And
Yeah.
the ideas weren't even, if you looked at the books, a lot of them weren't even, they were just getting more money in to build this idea.
Yes.
Well, when does
Yeah.
that idea become profitable? It doesn't have to become profitable to get more and more money in. But what I gleaned from that is, well, then I want to own ideas.
Yeah.
I own ideas. So give me a company and give me a staff where we could come up with ideas. And that's
Interesting.
what, and that's what I ended up doing. And that's what I do. That's what my business is. Business, the word business is so much bigger than show. And what it is and what this
Mhm.
office is right now that I'm sitting in, it's just what happened was eventually I realized that being at Universal and being at NBC, it felt like I was throwing a party at my parents' house. And because if I had ideas or I wanted to try something, even if I wanted to have a meeting with you, I had to leave your name at the gate to
Got
get
it.
on.
Yeah.
And I had to, and if I wanted to shoot something because I had an idea and I couldn't describe it, I couldn't do that. That took, I had to go through so many channels. So I ended up buying warehouse space, my own, and built my own company. And I'm here now, and I cohabitate with a bunch of like-minded friends and partners and people, and there's just so much more that come out of ideas than actual showing up places. And
It's
go
It's
ahead.
genius. The line that you just said about like throwing a party at my parents' house, that was so genius. I loved it. It reminds me of the production deal. We had Rob Dyrdek on from MTV, and when he negotiated his deal with
Right next
MTV,
door.
okay, so when he negotiated his deal with MTV, he talked about how he actually negotiated production. He's like, I didn't really care as much how much they were paying me per episode. I wanted the production value. And so he took his production company, and the show actually had to produce the show through his production company. He talks about how it went from 50,000 to 50 million. When you think about the IP of your ideas and you were able to negotiate this production opportunity, is there anything that like comes top of mind through your time in this production space that was like a marquee or a big idea that changed things for you or anything like
No,
that?
there isn't one. I don't have like a moment, but I'll give you an example of it because
Yeah.
I'm constantly doing things. I live. I have. It's almost a problem. FOMO is, a fear of missing out. I'm fascinated by how our world changes. I really
Mhm.
think that the fuel for success and life and youth even is curiosity. And
Yeah.
I think we lose our curiosity. When we're kids, you look at everything, whether it's stylish, whether it's music, whether it's pop culture, and you want to be part of that and you become a consumer of that. And then what happens is at a certain age, this is what I talk about your parents' age, but I'm older than your parents, but most people my age and way before me are really happy with comfort, and go, you know what? this is my favorite group. I'm only going to listen to this kind of music. This is the way I like to dress. I don't need to find what the latest and greatest is. And that's okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. Then there's somebody like me who, you know, my son introduced me to YouTube about 25 years ago, you know, and I'd see something with 100 million clicks and I'd read all the comments and they go, this is hysterical. Well, not only did I not find it hysterical, I didn't really understand. And then I was just obsessed with trying to figure out what this is. What is communicating? Like, I would realize now that even when older people go, you know, the music today is not music. Our music was music. No, you don't understand the music of today. And any music, even if it's your music that you liked from the 70s or the 60s, nobody would have listened to that in the 30s. Go listen to your barbershop trio and tell me how great that is and how much that, you know, but what I'm saying is we change. You have to adopt and adapt. And if you're not willing to adopt and adapt, that's not bad. It's just like, that's why I'm going to be 70 next year. That's why I'm busy, because I'm kind of interested in social media. One of the most eye-opening experiences I've had in the last month or two was going and hanging out with Mr. Beast, with Jimmy.
Yeah.
And are you aware of him?
Oh, of course.
Watching the way he is the most subscribed YouTuber. He moves millions and millions of dollars. Your parents' companies like Amazon are coming to him and want him to do shows. He doesn't do things like anybody has ever done them. It's so wonderfully untethered.
Yes.
But it's his world. He eats, breathes, and sleeps. Mr. Beast. He lives on my podcast. He gave me a tour of his place, you know, and he sleeps there, and every wall is just a white wall. So if he has an idea, he writes down the idea and then it comes to fruition. If he wants to make the biggest chocolate company, then he's competing against Hershey's and Mars, and he knows what each of those sales are in numbers. He is like Elon Musk or the Steve Jobs of today as far as social media.
Yeah,
goes.
he is.
You know,
he is.
I spoke to him yesterday. I'm fascinated with that.
Yeah.
You know, and what it is the idea of doing things, reacting to things, and acting differently than you did, you know, a decade ago. If you are doing the same thing, I mean, that's okay. That's comfortable. Yeah. You know, I'm very comfortable with discomfort. I want to feel like the outsider and just figure it out Figure out, like when you're building in Summerlin and there's no houses out there. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna help with the infrastructure. When you're doing comedy and that, you know what? I'm gonna promote my own tour. When I'm doing it, so whether it's real, I kind of approach everything, and I'll give you an example. So I was telling you, I live on social media. Yeah, I saw this on Instagram. I saw this company Proto Hologram, and these are the people. This guy David Nussbaum, who invented the Proto Hologram. He worked with a company that brought Tupac to Coachella. Okay. And if you know about that technology, it's not amazing. It is more like it's Pepper's Ghost, it's called, and it's more like you see at Disneyland when you go to the haunted house. Correct. It's a dark room, and they have an opaque screen that they project on. And then if there's things behind that, it looks like this thing that's projected and the real thing are together. And he said, well, how can I project things in light where I don't have to? So he built a hologram machine called Proto. And I saw it, and this was during COVID, and I DM'd him, and I said, how can I be part of this? You can use me. Like, you're going to need content to show people. I'm not looking for money. I'm not looking for pay. Anyway, we became fast friends. Wow. And I ended up investing in the company. And this is the headquarters, and we're in 38 countries now. We're in hospitals, e-commerce. I can't talk to you about all the places that are partners, but we're partners with Christie's. They've done $1.5 billion in art sales off the Proto. We're in government, we're in weaponry, we're in hospitals, we're in medicine. I think it's a new way to do e-commerce. We're making deals with Target and Walmart, and we just dropped Olivia Rodrigo's new album with Target. And if you go on Instagram to Proto Hologram, you'll see what it is. But to me, it's this technical canvas that it takes whatever your company is or whatever you want to do, you tell us how you want to use it. You know, Cartier is using it. They design on it.
Yeah.
You could shop on it. And
And
it's everything from informational to people are using it in their concerts.
yep.
I
What I think is cool is just like it's you. Your actions speak louder than your words, but your words speak so loud, Howie, right? You talk about curiosity as what drives you and fulfills you. And then, you know, your curiosity, even 47 years into this, you're going to meet with Mr. Beast. You're sending this guy a DM. You're doing 6 podcasts today. It's like the actions speak so high and they're so connected to the words of insight, which is, I don't know, it's just truly incredible. And it's obviously a derivative of the success you've had and the way you've had it. And I know, like, I want to ask you this. This is rapid fire because I think about your 47-year career because I know that my listeners are going to want to know this. So I have like 6 rapid fire questions if I could ask you about your career. Okay, so first one is all the jobs you've had, which are it's an endless list. Which of them are you the proudest of, looking back at 47 years?
As a job, a stand-up.
Stand-up. Okay. Which job was the most challenging?
Stand-up.
Interesting. Okay. That's why you liked it the most. Okay. Which job paid the most in all your years of work?
Stand-up.
Wow. Look at that. Even more than like America's Got Talent and all the big shows today. Wow. Okay. Which one job, and I know you said you're a yes guy and you take on pretty much everything, but if you look back at 47 years, what is one job you may have turned down that you look back and might have regret that decision?
A lot of movies. I didn't like movie making because unlike stand-up, what I love about stand-up, aside from what it affords me, is that's the one thing that I'm in the moment. And I just, that's rapid fire, right? I'm standing there in front of a live audience and I'm not editing myself and I feel like I'm in control and I can't think about anything else. When I did movies in the 80s, I hated it because I would have to just memorize 3 lines that you wrote, you know, and then stand on a piece of tape, say those lines, and they'd go cut. And I go back to my trailer and wait 2 hours for them to, you know, relight, and they're going to shoot the same fucking thing from another angle. It was so slow. I had no control and I just hated it. So I started turning down movies. There was a certain point in my career when I said, well, I do like the process of acting. I love doing St. Elsewhere. I turned down until no more offers come my way. So I feel bad that maybe I shouldn't have turned down. Maybe I should have been more choosy. I never did any great movies, but you know, I stopped that career and it bothers me that I put a cork in it.
Interesting. All right. What about, you know, you're 2024, you're still extremely relevant to all ages, which is wild. When you think about all the decisions that you made in your career, game show hosting, stand-up comedy, some of the acting or other projects in social media, podcasting, which one job do you think has had the biggest impact on your brand when it comes to relevancy and staying in the game?
I will also say stand-up, and I'll tell you why. Because it informs me of everything. You know, this weekend, right before I did this week, I played. You know, I did live concerts in Niagara Falls, New York.
I'm from Buffalo. Grew up. Toronto's right next door.
I know. I know Buffalo. I've played Melody Fair and Music Hall and all these. And I went to Crystal Beach all the time. But anyway, what I was saying was, and I was in Ashland, Kentucky, and I played. Riverside, Iowa, and I played Larchmont, Iowa. And the fact that that I spend time in front of thousands of people, not in LA, not in New York, not in Toronto, not in Chicago, but the real world, and I absorb that world, you know, while I'm there in town, informs everything I do, informs what I know and how I respond on AGT, informs who I am and what I experienced when I talk to my daughter on the podcast, informs everything I do. So that allows me to go everywhere, to be in front of people and to be cognizant of what they're reacting to and what they're relating to, you know, and until you're in front of a big crowd in middle America, in a place that you've never been or you don't know anybody from, you won't know that. So my life is a constant education, and my best class is stand-up.
I'm interested because you had jobs at such high levels, and you talked about the idea of like, I didn't really negotiate that. I was more interested in production value because with that, I can have IP of ideas, and that's the longer play. Is it fair to say that money doesn't motivate you? Like, when you go to these AGT, like, are you negotiating hard? Are you like, I must be paid this
No.
amount?
And this is the thing about not thinking ahead. I think about like, what's the first thought? Oh, I'd love to produce things. I'd love to have an idea. Maybe if I would have thought like any other person, you might think, if I would have thought, you might think, oh my God, this show's a hit. They need me.
Yeah.
I could negotiate for millions right now.
Yeah.
But my instinct said, well, I want some ownership over ideas. I think I'm in a position where I can kind of sell ideas. I want to do that. Maybe if I would have thought, I would have gotten more money, but I wouldn't have been in a position to kind of develop ideas, which is really clear on what brought me, I'm sitting right now in this is like 30,000 square feet with different people doing different things in different industries. And that brought me to this, and some of the other things that I'm doing. So what I'm saying is, I think my agents would have rather me negotiate money. Yeah. I think if I really sat down and thought, I didn't think, I reacted. I don't think. Thinking isn't good for me. But it might be good for other people. But I think you don't think, you do. Nike says just do it. Yeah. I say don't say no.
Interesting.
I say, just go with your instinct. We're human. Our instinct is always right.
Yeah.
Come up with it. Our thoughts are never right because it's not. Your thought is not real. Your thought is not real. You think, okay, if I could just negotiate this much more, if you really thought about it, I'm going to try to get this much money. That's what I'm going to do. Forget about the ideas. Forget about owning the thing. I'm going to think about it. That's not a good thing. So I would have ended up with so many more thousands an episode. Would my life be any different if I had that much more? No, it wouldn't. It's only different because...
Howie, I would make the argument now that I'm hearing you because it is so counterintuitive, right? So much of what we hear is go get paid, go get paid, go get paid. I might make the argument your life might actually be worse off if you were so focused on money because who knows in a business that's so hard to compete, they would have kept like renewing you if you were like hard to deal with and always wanted money. And who knows if you'd still have all the things
you don't know what it is. But here's the point. The point is that if you're negotiating for more money, or you're thinking, forget about it even being a negotiation. What are you thinking about? Well, you're thinking about, if you're making decisions based on thought, your thought is, well, the last time I tried this happened.
Yeah.
Well, that also doesn't mean, first of all, that's your perception of how it happened, number one. Number two, that's gone, so it's not now. And number three, that doesn't mean that'll happen again. You don't have control over that. Could happen, but there's no guarantee that will happen. You're also thinking, well, if I do this, then I can do that. Well, that's also the future. The only reality we have right now is right now.
It's right now.
This is the only reality. So if you act accordingly right now, it's possibly the safest place to make decisions. And if you make a decision, I don't have a lot of regrets. You asked me about movies. You made me think about something. But I'm really... as happy as I could be, I have mental health issues and I deal with them each and every waking moment of my life, but I'm doing good. But as far as professionally, I have no regrets. None.
Yeah.
None. Have I made a lot of mistakes? Yes. Have there been very embarrassing losing moments? Yes. Do I have one regret? No.
Interesting. Yeah. And I know there's so many things I could talk to you about. One of the things you just alluded to was your mental health. And I know you've talked about this stuff ad nauseum before, but I do think just one question regarding it would be, you talked about the fact that, you would live in a general state of fear and anxiety and worry, and that you're constantly grasping at this survival technique. And then you told this story about in your 40s, like the coming to moment where you're going to the airport, limo picks you up to catch the plane. One of your kids crosses their legs, which kind of triggered you. And then also additionally, the lace touched your pant leg where you're like, I have to go back, change my pants. No, we have to fucking go back and change my pants. And your wife had said, Howie, if you don't get help, I'm done. And so I want to take what was probably and still is an ever working process in your life and what people would perceive as a negative and try to find a positive in it. And I'll send it to you. Is there any possibility that some of these mental health issues you've had to deal with, because you've dealt with them properly, have actually been channeled in a way that are a differentiating factor for the good in your career when you compare yourself to peers in such a tough industry?
Probably, though, it's more about, and this is what it is in life, my coping skills.
Yeah.
You know, and that's and how I cope with it, and my because I need to be in the moment, because I am impulsive and whatever, has helped me to create a philosophy. But I think there isn't anybody alive, any human, whether you're diagnosed with something or not, that isn't going to need coping skills at some point in their life. And when you can cope, and whether it's the pressure of having to, you know, make a payment, whether it's the pressure of, you know, a relationship, whether it's the pressure of dealing with loss, of dealing with bad news, of dealing with an incredible amount of responsibility that life can throw your way, you're going to need a coping skill. And whether that coping skill is talking to somebody, being medicated, taking deep breaths, working out, talking to your loved one, going to a caregiver, whatever that is, if we recognize that you are going to need help at some point in your life, and that can come from within yourself, then you're going to be more productive. And what I mean by productive, that's not necessarily productive of making more money, but I think it could end up being that. But you're going to be better at work. You're going to be better in relationships. You're going to be better in management. You're going to be better at coping. You're going to do whatever you do in life better if you figure out what your coping skill is with whatever. Nobody is going to go through life, work, career, relationships without pressure. And whether that is a diagnosable, you know, issue like OCD or ADHD, or just, you know, loss or, you know, anxiety or neurosis, it's going to be something, and you're going to have to cope. So my word is just figure out what your coping skill is.
Okay, I like that. Figure out what your coping skills. We just have a couple more minutes with you. One last question I got for you is when you're talking about these hard times, we talked about it personally, but professionally, on all the stages you've ever been on, whether it's live TV, you're doing stand-up, or any place that you're on a stage, what do you look back and be like, that was a really hard moment, and this is what I learned from it?
Well, first of all, on any of these areas, I love and kind of bask in the hard moment. Nothing that's easy and that goes fluidly sticks with me, you know, and they're forgetful. They don't move you ahead. It's kind of like that old saying, no pain, no gain. Yeah. And what's really exciting is when you are faced with a problem and you solve that problem. That's a joy, you know, if you know, to move out here and not know a soul, and you know, and now to be able, my wife and I, each and every day, I've been married to the same girl for 44 years, go, can you believe this? From acting like an idiot, from pulling a glove on my head, can you believe, look at our house, look at my office.
But did you ever have like a moment where like you had a full panic? Like, I know the hard moments you strive in, and that's clearly why I've gotten to where you are. But did you ever have a moment where like, I had a full panic attack on stage, or like I passed out, or I can't believe I just said that shit, that you're just like, you cringe at?
I've ended up in the hospital, and I thought I was having a heart attack, and they were panic attacks, and I've been pulled. I've passed out on stage. I've felt sick at home and called 911 because I can't deal with the pressure, and then they had to readjust my medication. So I have felt it physically. I'm constantly dealing physically with the amount of pressure or anxiety that any of these situations present. Standing there and going blank in front of thousands of people, being on live TV, being concerned about what I might have said and what might have slipped out in this day and age of the ability of being canceled. I'm constantly scared of anything that I post, but I'm constantly posting. I've just, there's always, but can you keep going? Can you do one more sit up of life?
I love that.
There's so many times when it hurts and I don't think I can do more, and I just take a deep breath and I end up on a gurney at a hospital, and then I get through it and I go, you know what? I survived and it's fine. And even though whatever caused that is a huge failure, I realize in the pantheon of everything I've done, you're not aware. And you're talking to me about my career, and you've obviously done your research. You're not aware of incredibly embarrassing, horrible, career-ending moments. It just doesn't matter. It's just life.
Yeah.
And we just have to cope. And at this point in my life, I have a lot more coping skills because I'm old. And I'm figuring it out. But it's not easy. But it shouldn't be easy.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's perfectly said. I mean, you just listed a million things that have happened on TV or in live presence, and no one speaks to them today. And it shouldn't be that. It shouldn't be easy. It's not easy, and that's what is who you are today, right? That's all growth that has happened because of you falling. All right, I got just one last question before you, and then we'll get your trading secret and let you get out of here. And it's a question from the Money Mafia. That's our listener group. They are all curious. Deal or no deal? The banker. How the hell does the banker come up with now you've been the banker on No Deal, Deal or No Deal Island. You've obviously worked with the banker. Is there an algorithm? Is there a calculation? Is there a little bit of play? Talk to me. How do the numbers come to
There is definitely a calculation. So the actual show was invented by, I'm trying to remember his name, Dick. I know his first name's Dick. John DeMal's company invented it, and he's a mathematician, and it's based on a mathematical equation. And that mathematical equation, the amounts that are in 26 separate cases and even more, you plug that into this equation, and as they pull out amounts, the odds, that changes the odds of yours holding the highest amount, whatever that is. And when you plug that into that mathematical equation, you got a little bit of play, but there is a range of, what is deemed a fair offer based on the odds of you staying in the game or selling your case right there. And then the banker, even when it wasn't me, based on that, you can play those odds. Like, do you think that this guy's or woman, you play, it's kind of like poker, because you say, all right, so the range right now is from 93 to 105. You can make an offer based on what they did.
Gotcha.
Well, then you could decide, you can go, listen, are they gonna, I think if I go 100, they'll get out. But I think that they got 6 more to open. I think he's going to take the chance that you're playing against the person.
Yeah, of course.
Under 100, or I'm going to go for 100 to get them out because I think that they're only going to go one more. Like, how do you play that game?
Yeah,
so
of course.
It's a game of poker, but you have a little range.
Interesting. You got the range in a game of poker. Okay. And then the last one I got to ask, and I promise it's the last one. I promise. My background, MBA, accounting and finance, all the finance and banking stuff, hence this podcast, but I was on reality TV. So the listeners just submitted a million questions. We got to talk about AGT. We got to talk about Deal or No Deal, but we didn't get to talk about your podcast. And just the one overarching question about your podcast, I just got to get your take on it. And you've talked about like mistakes. You've talked about, it connects to everything you've said. Like, I just say go, I just do it and I'll learn. Was the Tom Sandoval interviews. There's so many Vanderpump fans. Like, when you look back at that, I think it was about a year ago at this point. Like, what's your take on that interview on your podcast? Because so many people are like,
for me, it was a huge, for me, number one, huge success. huge success. I love podcasting with my daughter. That's a highlight.
Yeah.
I'll tell you why it's a huge success. It's got, I think, just on YouTube alone, I don't have the numbers on the audio. It's got 1.2 million clicks. So that makes it a success. People were tuning in, whether you like what you heard or not. I made a concerted effort not to challenge. That was my point. And that's why he came on. And that's why I got the scoop as being the first interview. I wasn't going to, I don't watch, I did, now I do, but I didn't watch Vanderpump Rules. And I thought of it as, let this be his deposition. Let him answer. And then you can, in the public court of law and on the show, you can see. And it was so much fun watching after, because he did kind of tell a different story than what was actually happening, but that's okay. I had a hard time with my daughter because she was really a viewer and wanted to wear her Send It to Daryl sweatshirt and wanted to take the other side and wanted to challenge him. And I kept kicking her under the table. The big surprise and the takeaway for me was the veracity of the Bravo audience coming at me with such hate, and also interpreting my question of why this is so big. Like, why is it permeating outside of Bravo, on CNN and Fox and the national news things? Why do I know Scandival? Why did I hear this? Why is it such a big deal? Which was interpreted by the Bravo of me saying it's no big deal. I would never cheat. If somebody cheated on my daughter, I'd want to kill him. I don't really, so I wasn't condoning, but I guess that question, and I could never, and I'll probably get heat now from people who are listening and watching this. I'm not condoning it, but that was my question. I didn't know, because as far as a lot of reality TV goes, including Vanderpump Rules, there was a lot of cheating before. Like, why is this one even bigger? Why is Lala's husband, who I know from the movie business, why is that not that big? And she has a kid and he's cheating and they cheated. Why is that not on CNN? Why is this different?
But again, it's just my takeaway is we try and go through your career and gather insights so we could deploy it ourselves. It's another example of everything you say you do. You let your curiosities drive. You're not familiar with the show. You see it's taken over the world. You're curious why the behaviors of these actions are taking over the world. You step into it. It becomes the biggest show that you've had, or one of the biggest from the podcast, right? So I think it's really cool how all your words and inspiration do connect to your actions. And then from the actions, we could actually see numbers. We could see results that we can learn into. So this has been unbelievable. It could have gone another couple hours, but we'll cut there. What we end with every episode is a trading secret. So through your 47 plus year career, a piece of advice, a trading secret into the industry, something that the listeners, they couldn't get from a professor or a YouTube tutorial or a TikTok, they could only get from Howie Mandel. What is one trading secret you can leave us with, Howie?
Say yes to instinct.
I like it. Say yes to instinct. And Howie, where can everyone find your podcast and everything you have going on?
Howie Mandel Does Stuff is the name of the podcast. We're on YouTube and wherever you get that. And AGT is starting this season. Go to howiemandel.com and you'll find out our dates. But Howie Mandel Does Stuff is the podcast.
All right. Everyone go check out the podcast. Howie, thank you for being on Trading Secrets. This was an awesome episode. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, buddy.